This video is brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/halocanon for a 30-day free trial and a free credit on an audiobook download. Stay tuned for more details. Halo Shadows of Reach is the next book in the Master Chief Story series, once again authored by Troy Denning. Set in October of 2559, a year after Halo 5, the Spartans of Blue Team are deployed to Reach to recover secret assets from beneath the ruins of Castle Base. However, everything goes sideways when it's revealed that the Banished are on Reach too. Now, Blue Team must find a way to complete their mission while being dogged by Jiralhanae and avoiding the notice of Cortana. If you haven't read the book yet, I did a spoiler-free review last month, which you can see here, or find linked in the description box below. But if you're ready for spoilers, let's dive right in. Our story opens on October 7th, 2559, just short of a year since the end of Halo 5 and the takeover of the galaxy by Cortana and the Created, as Blue Team inserts onto Reach. Their mission is Operation Wolf, a descent 2 kilometers into the ruins of Oni's old castle base to recover an asset that would help Dr. Halsey fight against the Created. And if you're familiar at all with Troy Denning's novels, you know the Insertion is destined to go straight to hell. Deploying from the northern polar region and planning to slowly descend and slow as they approach Castle Base to avoid detection, the Owl craft carrying Blue Team soon spots 5 Seraphs on the horizon and detects Jiralhanae transmissions. Worse, they soon see flares in other directions followed by more Seraphs. Luckily, they're largely able to evade the Seraphs by making it appear as though the Owl were a meteorite that had entered Reach's atmosphere and exploded. By basically exploding themselves. In truth, the maneuver uses a series of exploding Argent V missiles while pulling a high G maneuver, which does end up crashing the craft. But they evade the Seraphs and land, technically speaking. Blue Team and the flight crew extract from Special Delivery, their Owl craft, though they have to take a few moments to dig out both the pilot and co-pilot. This gives the Seraphs an opportunity to find them, though Fred is able to take a couple of them out using a drilling jumbo, which uses plasma to excavate. In the hands of a Spartan 2, it also operates as a handy anti-air gun, to a limited degree. The Seraphs begin their next run, though cautiously, this and the patterned search after their craft leading John to believe these Seraphs might be keepers of the One Freedom. However, during their extraction, John is able to confirm their enemy, the Banished. As they escape, the Owlcraft is self-destructed, giving the team a sizable distraction. We then cut to a new perspective, which is that of the last Dokab caster, once a leader of the Keepers of the One Freedom and, as we learn, now a chieftain in the Banished, the Keepers having joined just a year and a half before. And here I have to briefly pause. When I first read the book, I found this part pretty disappointing. Keeper ideology is basically in line with the Old Covenant, at least as far as them believing in the Great Journey. On the other hand, the Banished are basically about power for the sake of power. So I just couldn't buy that Castor would simply join the Banished, even given his history with Atriox, the two having been battle brothers during the days of the Covenant. Had the Keepers joined after the Created Uprising, that would have made a bit more sense, but they joined well before that happened. However, later story revelations seem to hint that Castor may have been inclined to join the Banished at the suggestion of the Oracle, aka the Forerunner Archeon-class Ancilla Intrepid Eye from other Troy Denning novels. If that ultimately ends up being the case, I can't wait to see what she's up to. Getting back to the story though, we learned that when Atriox left for the Ark, he left Escharum, his former mentor, in charge. The unity of the Banished under Escharum has been lacking, with each chieftain mainly looking to consolidate their own power, leading to a lot of infighting. Castor is particularly worried about 2 other chieftains on Reach who might attack them as the Keepers are not yet trusted. We further learn why the Banished are on Reach. They're looking for a portal known to the Banished as the Portal Under the Mountain, supposedly a way to get to Atriox wherever he may be. And pausing again, yes, I'm fairly certain Portal Under the Mountain is a play on King Under the Mountain from The Hobbit. There's actually another rather amazing Tolkien reference later on too. Second, I do like that the Banished have been looking for a way to reach Atriox, given that they haven't heard from him in months. And third, I feel this is likely the ultimate nail in the coffin for resolving Halo Wars' storyline in a game. While it's not happening here, I'd bet dollars to donuts that the resolution to that conflict will be mentioned in Halo Infinite. Anyway though, back to it. Krellis, the son of Orsun, keeps encouraging Castor to forcibly take the other banished factions on Reach under his command, but Castor refuses. His plan is to find the portal and keep it guarded from other banished forces until Escharum arrives. As we learned via flashback just over 3 months ago, Escharum received a message from Atriox on the Ark and had shared it with Castor and Blademaster Inslan Gadogai, a Blademaster attached to the Keeper Legion. The message said that Atriox had found 3 fragments of the slipspace crystal that once resided on Reach. If you've read Halo First Strike, or seen my recent video on the history of Reach, you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, this was a Forerunner crystal with immense slipspace properties, allowing a ship to travel further and faster through the higher dimensions. And at the end of First Strike, it was destroyed, though a few fragments were recovered by Tartarus and delivered to the Prophet of Truth. The remains of those were then found by Atriox within Truth's keyship on the Ark. For years, we've been speculating about those fragments and the fate of the keyship, it even being mentioned in the leader profile for Colony that the Megalogolo Bond brothers were searching old keyship sites on the Ark. It's awesome to see such confirmations after so many years. Anyway, Atriox's command is for the Banished to find the portal on Reach, referred to only as the Portal Under the Mountain, and join him at the Ark. Back in the present, Castor and a few other subordinates investigate the human crash site. Though they initially think the forces were sent to reinforce the human colonists already present on the planet, with the help of the Kig Yar, they find that the humans had brought drilling equipment. This leads Castor to one conclusion. They too must be looking for the portal, or at least know that the Banished are. And of course you can bet that the portal is beneath the ruins of Castle Base. Or more accurately, the Menachite Mountain. Back with Blue Team and the Special Delivery crew, they're making their way through the Tarnok Gorge towards the Highland Mountains when they come across the ruins of a town where banished forces appear to be fighting with each other over the spoils of recent battle. Getting their bearings, the Spartans are able to pinpoint their location and mark a path towards the former location of Menachite Mountain where Castle Base once lay. Sneaking their way into the former city, they plan to steal a transport and make towards their objective. As they make their way though, they spot several Seraphs, noting an odd behavior. It seems like they're only pretending to seriously engage, which likely means that they're actually interested in what the UNSC are up to on Reach. Whatever the truth is, Blue Team moves forward, preparing to ambush the craft. The plan goes about as well as one would expect. Initially, they're able to keep the Seraphs at bay, but local banished forces soon launch a wing of Banshees, causing John, Fred, and Kelly to sustain serious injuries. Fred gets a concussion, Kelly has a hole blown in her chest plate and nicks an artery, and John's thigh armor is partially slagged, his thigh damaged as well. Their Mjolnir's biofoam injectors are able to stabilize the bleeding, but they are far from fine. From the riverbed they've been using as cover, the Spartans break the Le Chatelierite bottom, falling into a cavern below that had once run beneath the river. There, they find themselves face to face with the Reach Rehab Pioneers. After briefly being berated by one Major Istvan Erde for ruining a month-long planned operation, the team moves out while John gets to know the group's commander, Colonel Sasha Boldasar. I have to note too, there's a great moment when Sasha confirms that John is indeed the legendary John 117, expressing thanks that the UNSC sent only the best. John responds that there's a difference between, quote, the best and the best known, that all Spartans are quite capable. I love deconstructions of the Master Chief legend like this. It's something that Troy Denning has done extremely well in previous Master Chief books and continues to do so here. Anyway, Major Erde sets up C-10 explosives as they make their way to the main camp, which start going off as Banished pursue, likely in choppers. The Spartans and Pioneers manage to escape the tunnels and blast their pursuers to hell, though the shockwave catches more than a few of the Pioneers. No fatalities, but plenty of ears and nosebleeds. From there, they start making their way back to the Pioneer base camp. Meanwhile, Castor is meeting with Chieftains Deucalion and Ballas, leaders of the Legion of the Corpse Moon and the Ravaged Tusks, respectively. Deucalion is said to have the names of those he condemned to the Corpse Moon inscribed on his blunt tusks, and Ballas is described as short and stocky, almost wide as he is tall. So basically a brute Danny DeVito. Anyway, while Castor had been searching for the portal under the mountain, Ballas and Deucalion had been fighting over settlements and paltry resources. But now Castor needs their help. He suspects the portal lay beneath the Highland Mountains and he needs the two chieftains' forces to find and hold it. The talks don't go well. Neither Ballas or Deucalion fans of Castor nor his religious fervor, but Castor is able to come up with a plan after much deliberation. If the Spartans are present to take out the Banished, they'll know soon enough. Otherwise, he'll head for the Highland mountain range and await their arrival. 25 hours after meeting up with the rehab pioneers, John finds himself at their base getting what limited treatment he can for his burns. During this, we get a lot of fascinating insight into those that are trying to rehabilitate Reach. In particular, you have Colonel Sasha Boldasar, who we find is the great-great-granddaughter of Ferenc Kisvarda, founder of Kisvarda Metals, a huge mining conglomerate that started out on Reach and expanded over time. Sasha herself founded a company called Karups Agricultural, which was pretty big in its time. Alternatively, you have people like Rendor Borbelli, who says his family won't be able to join their ancestors in the afterlife if they're buried on another planet. I don't know about y'all, but that last piece there caught my attention in particular. This is something I absolutely love about Troy Denning's works, these little details about future life that you might not think about. Like, how did this family's beliefs evolve in such a way that being buried on Reach specifically is necessary to join their ancestors in the afterlife? That's really weird and really cool. And then the backstory on Sasha and her motivations just add this extra layer of immersion into Reach's history. We know about the titanium mines that helped make Reach the powerhouse it once was, but you never really think about the human industry behind that and what that would look like. Moving on, after checking on Fred and Kelly's statuses, Kelly having been discharged but Fred still under observation, he joins Kelly and the two are escorted to be debriefed by the militia commanders. Upon arriving, after being escorted via Warthog by Lieutenant Bella Distil, 5-time winner of the Tantalus 10,000, the Spartans meet with Colonel Boldasar and 9 other commanders. Boldasar informs John of perimeter cameras being taken out, leading the militia to think it might be Banished closing in. However, John secretly believes that it might be Linda, her status light having briefly flashed on earlier. Using the team comm, he manages to confirm that she's out there. Luckily, she had noticed the tracks being left by the rest of Blue Team and the militia and had followed their route to the underglass tunnels. After confirming that, John and Kelly make some general inquiries about the layout of the tunnels beneath the surface, gathering what intel they can about the network, all while trying to avoid bringing up why Blue Team are actually on Reach and getting dragged into a fight they can't afford. Not the Spartans, nor the militia. Talks are tense as Blue Team keeps trying to get the militia to call off any idea of an attack, but the militia won't have it. Eventually, talk turns to the idea of drawing the Banished into a specific location, specifically New Mohache, and setting off a Havoc nuke. This would of course immediately get Cortana's attention, due to several satellites in the Epsilon Eridani system that might detect the nuke and ping waypoint, eventually getting back to her. With this out of the question, John changes tactics. He has Linda reveal herself to the Rangers that had been sent out to find whomever was taking out the perimeter cameras, then offers to get rid of the Banished, including the Keepers, who John has been informed are working with the Banished. 2 days later, and the plan is in motion. Blue Team and Special Team, the crew of Special Delivery, would dig a tunnel into the old sewers between New Mohache, doing some brief scouting, then getting militia rangers topside to take out the Banished forces in the city and secure the area for Marine forces from Infinity to be inserted. And of course, none of this goes according to plan. An underglass bog is accidentally breached, filling their tunnel with carbon dioxide and methane, causing Special Team and the militia to pass out. Then, when trying to aerate the tunnel, they draw the attention of 5 jackals. Though John disposes of them and notes the Banished base still hasn't gone on alert, he estimates they have maybe 10 minutes to get topside into the city before that changes. While Lieutenant Chapov of Special Team uses the plasma drill to open a hole in the floor and drain out some of the carbon dioxide, Blue Team works to rush Petty Officer Mukai and the Rangers to the surface to get them some fresh air, and just barely manage to do so. John tells Mukai to send up anyone who can hold a weapon, then joins Blue Team in their demolition op. Each Spartan would take on a specific task. Kelly would secure the breach point, Fred would clip the Banished wings, and Linda would take out tower guards and drop the shield wall that surrounded the city. John, meanwhile, would handle the armor. Moving as fast as they can, Blue Team goes to work eliminating any hostiles they encounter along the way while working on their individual tasks and supporting each other where possible. But eventually they're found out as John starts to encounter shield-equipped brute commanders. While moving on to the armory, John is confronted by 5 more brutes, 2 carrying a new weapon called a skewer, an anti-tank rocket launcher that also features a signature bayonet that all brute weaponry has. Luckily, using the shadows of early morning to his advantage, and with the help of Linda, they're quickly dispatched. Fred reports that they're ready to blow the Banished air support, and John approves. Linda moves to take out sentries while Kelly blows the sentry towers in her wake. The militia is ordered to move in early, creating a diversion, and John gets to work on the armor. Unfortunately, he doesn't arrive at the armor depot in time, but luckily Fred is on the way to back him up. Between the two Spartans, about half of the armor is eliminated before the rest can move out. As it does, Chapov's voice comes over the radio, saying that the remaining armor won't be much of a problem. Moving to one of the now vacant sentry towers, John sees that Special Team had been digging trenches that the Banished armor would have to move over to get to the incoming militia armor, made up of warthogs and gun or mongooses, which would take out several more marauders and wraiths. By dawn, the town of New Mohache would be freed. Meanwhile, aboard the Infinity in space near Reach, Dr. Halsey watches 3 Analyst-class frigates blanket the planet in a full-spectrum jamming blanket, while longswords destroy any old satellites in orbit. If you aren't aware, the Analyst-class frigate are the ships we see in the Halo 5 menu alongside Infinity. When she notes the ship isn't getting any closer to Reach, she heads to the bridge to confront Captain Lasky. Her escort tries to stop her, grabbing the Doctor's new prosthetic arm, but she manages to get through. As it turns out, there are 3 destroyers and a Carve, a new Banished design ship, over the planet. Infinity had been holding back to scout the situation. If any of those ships could make a superluminal communication, it would inevitably draw Cortana's attention. The ships soon move to engage the longswords and Analyst-class frigates, forcing Infinity to engage. As they do, Lasky orders 120 Spartan 4s, supported by broadswords, ODSTs, Pelicans, and Albatrosses, to be deployed to Reach. Back on the planet, the militia is encamped in the city of New Mohache, fortified as best it could be over the past 26 hours. Linda 058 is perched atop a tall building with her Nornfang, and John, Kelly, and Fred are outside the city, watching the Banished forces behind their armored column as they rain down plasma on the city in the rain. Basically a Halo Battle of Helm's Deep. Readying rocket launchers, John, Fred, and Kelly work to weaken the enemy armor. They fired their rockets as cubes of C-10 explosives, planted the night before when the Spartans had infiltrated enemy lines, destroy 15 marauders. As the Spartans moved to secondary positions, Reavers scanned the sky for enemy aircraft, thinking the explosions were bombs being dropped. More C-10 and rockets go off, though this time John is spotted. Moving to their third positions, John is forced to take care of approaching marauders while Kelly and Fred finish the volley of rockets and C-10. They then fall back to New Mohache. Not long after arriving and taking out some pursuing marauders, Kelly, Fred, John, and Chapov are all called to meet with the militia commanders, escorted again by the insane driving of Lieutenant Bella Distel. There's a great moment at the end of the chapter here where John basically realizes what it means to be the Master Chief. Throughout the story so far, Max Chapov is a hotshot pilot who thinks he knows what's going on and how to handle the situation. He soon realizes that that isn't the case, and moves on to try to impress the Master Chief, his idol, a living legend, and actually succeeds at doing so a little bit, albeit after more than a couple beratings. And through this, John reflects on the servicemen and women he'd fought with that dedicated their lives to humanity, the likes of Halima Ascot, Miranda Keyes, and Avery Johnson. These people weren't born this way, but molded and influenced by older mentors, much like Colonel Marmon Crowther had done for John more than 30 years earlier. Now John is the old wise mentor to a new generation of troopers like Chapov. When Shadows of Reach was announced as the next book in the Master Chief story series, I was a little worried that it would leave a lot of the narrative threads left over from Oblivion hanging in limbo. While I can't deny that that's still on my mind, the emotional and character arc for John started in those books really comes to a head here in this moment. It's an amazing payoff that Troy has retroactively started with Silent Storm and Oblivion that works its way through even the Halo games and comes to a head here in Shadows of Reach. To call that sort of narrative work amazing is a disservice to what's happening, but I'm at a loss for words, if I'm to be honest. Holy shit is about all I can say. Bra fucking vo, Mr. Denning. Upon arriving at the command building, incoming air support is detected from the sky, quickly identified as being Banished. Seeing little other choice, the militia prepares to set one of their Havocs for detonation. Much as John would like to avoid that, as he cannot contact Infinity, the best he can do is advise Colonel Boldasar on the best method to make sure that most of her militia survives. A 35-minute timer, break through defenses to the south, which will mostly be infantry, and continue the fight at another date. and since it looks, at the moment, like their support has disappeared, Blue Team would be present to provide it. Luckily, after taking out the first wave of air support with a combination of rockets, anti-air guns, and batteries, and the insane driving skills of 5-time Tantalus 10,000 winner Bella Distal to escort John around the battlefield, what looks to be a second wave of air support is in fact support from the UNSC Infinity. Again, I can't help but draw comparisons to Helm's Deep. However, there's little time for celebration as Distal takes a spike to the head. The battle's still ongoing. I won't lie, I teared up at this moment. Distal was such a fun character, it hurt to see her go. But that's war. John and Kelly soon meet up with Commander Palmer, who is leading fire teams Intrepid and Taurus. John informs her of his need for air support and guesses what Palmer and the fire teams are there for: the nukes. Given that a detonation would almost certainly attract Cortana's attention, putting Infinity at great risk, it's a pretty understandable priority. 2 hours later, and Blue Team is almost ready to go when a Banished intrusion corvette makes entry and heads straight for the Highland Mountains, likely, as John guesses, to meet with the Keepers of the One Freedom. Requesting a broadsword escort, Blue and Special Teams depart. The corvette, carrying War Chief Escharum, heads straight for the Highland Mountains where Castor and his Keepers have been waiting for the past 3 days, hoping the Spartans would lead them to the portal. To say he was shocked at the battle in New Mohache would be an understatement. This is another thing I always love about Troy Denning's books, each faction making assumptions about what the other groups are up to. It feels very realistic and makes for some great drama. Anyway, Escharum arrives to appraise the situation, but they're soon interrupted when they spot the Pelican and broadswords headed for the location that was once the Menachite Mountain. The mountain beneath which Castle Base once lay, which had been destroyed by the Covenant during the fall of Reach. Thinking he finally has the portal in arm's length, Castor orders the human vessels destroyed. With dozens of Keeper Banshees and Seraphs approaching Blue Team's Pelican at escort, it's only thanks to the superb piloting skills of Lieutenant Chapov and the skilled broadsword pilots that the team is able to make it to the former location of the Reach military complex that held Castle Base. Dips and dives, swaying through narrow gorges, it's a scene straight out of Red vs. Blue's latter seasons, and Chapov evades enemy fire. Ultimately, they are forced to crash yet again, but they survive thanks to the now seasoned Lieutenant. Sadly, the Pelican comes down on an anti-air Wraith and one of its cannons crushes the Lieutenant's chest in. Still alive for the moment, he requests an M57 rocket launcher to distract the remaining Banshees and give Blue and Special Teams extra time. John gives Chapov a salute and heads out. Upon arriving at the entrance to Castle Base, they find Keepers using anti-gravity equipment to dig out the entrance, which certainly makes part of their job easier. Unfortunately, the Corvette and several air and anti-air defenses aren't too far away. Luckily, additional air support that John had requested before the Pelican ride arrives in a few hours. With their help, the Spartans are able to take out the Banished forces, drive off the Corvette for the time being, and make their way towards the Castle Base entrance along with Special Team. A few jump pack brutes, dropped off before the Corvette withdrew, make it to the entrance shaft first, forcing John, Kelly, and Linda to slowly descend to avoid the team getting ambushed by Keepers or Banished. Kelly remains above ground with Special Team. As they descend and approach the actual entrance to Castle Base, they realize that the Keepers are even lower, trying to access the Forerunner site which the base had been built over. But that isn't their concern. The Spartans take control of the gravity lift that the Keepers had been using to move material and troops, and finally enter Castle Base along with Special Team and their excavation equipment. Just a few hours later, John, Kelly, and Linda make their way into Halsey's office. Fred, in the meantime, sees if he can gather any intel on what the Keepers are after. Slowly making their way, both Linda and John have to hold sections of rubble in place to allow Kelly to get to the entrance to Halsey's lab, where she encounters a most unexpected surprise: Kalmia, or a remnant of her. If you're unfamiliar, Kalmia was sort of like Cortana's older sister, another AI used to test the intrusion software that Cortana would eventually be given for Operation Red Flag. She was destroyed in Halo First Strike to keep her data out of Covenant hands. Her appearance was, as far as I can find, never described in First Strike, but here she's noted as being a green holographic female that resembles Cortana, taking the notion of her being Cortana's sister to a much more literal degree than before. This version of Cortana is more akin to a ghost, however, a subroutine the AI had created before termination to watch over Halsey's lab. With the biometric spoof equipment provided to them, Kelly gets into the lab's vault, grabs a container and 3 cryo bins, and the Spartans make their way back to the gravity lift. Fred, meanwhile, trying to find signs of the Keepers, is surprised by a very unexpected appearance, none other than Veda Mike Foxtrot Lopez. So, big pause time here, because basically holy shit at this reveal. If you're unaware, Veda is one of the main characters of two more Troy Denning novels, Halo's Last Light and Retribution. Originally a detective on the colony of Gao, she had to flee the planet and soon joined up with Oni, leading a covert squad made up of 3 Spartan 3s of Gamma Company she had gotten to know while on Gao. On occasion, she'd work with Blue Team, usually against Keepers of the One Freedom. And according to Fred, she nor her Spartans, known as ferrets, had been heard from in 2 years. Earlier in the book, there was this odd mention of 4 human keepers that were interacting with Castor, and it was noted that 3 of them called the 4th Mom. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but turns out that was the first hint at what Veda Lopez and her ferrets had been up to in the post-created galaxy. Holy shit. So, Fred, just as shocked if not more than the reader to see Lopez, asks what she's doing here. She passes him a message capsule, then fires an SMG as she says, "Go, demon, be gone." Castor, deeper in the installation at the portal, hears the gunfire. It's revealed in narration that Veda and the ferrets had been sent to Castor by the Oracle, aka the AI Intrepid Eye, another prominent character in Last Light and Retribution. What Intrepid Eye is up to by sending them is entirely up in the air, and a story for another day. For now, the portal has been activated and a Lich comes through, carrying Jato Ratum and Balkaris, 2 banished leaders mentioned in Halo Wars 2's Phoenix logs, and Zeratis, also known as Scourgemaker, a new banished leader. After a few more depart, Atriox himself appears and meets with Escharum. While that's happening, Castor's forces board the Lich, planning to go to the Ark immediately, be it salvation or death on the other side. In space, John delivers the packages to Dr. Halsey as Infinity moves out system to avoid Cortana's approaching forces. And that concludes Halo Shadows of Reach, and damn what a book! On a surface level, the book is fairly similar to previous entries from Troy Denning, particularly Oblivion, but the devil is in the details, and the details make this book. A return to Reach with Blue Team is enticing on its own, full of potential, and Troy Denning delivers in just about any manner one could reasonably want. We have a meeting with post-war resettlers, information on Reach's past and history, nods to Halo Reach and Halo the Fall of Reach, and the classic Blue Team family dynamic we've come to know and expect. The book absolutely plays to nostalgia, but it never leans on it as a crutch. Shadows of Reach is definitely a slow burn, not dissimilar to Oblivion or Retribution, and I can see some people might not be on board with that. It can seem like the book is filled with a lot of fluff, but for me, that's exactly what I was looking for from this book. I also saw that plenty of people were disappointed that we never got to see what precisely Blue Team recovered from the planet, but those items were essentially a MacGuffin, not the point of the story, just a plot device to move it forward. The core of the story was Blue Team, John's return to Reach, and their interactions with the militia. In those regards, this story absolutely delivered. And a few Lord of the Rings references here and there certainly didn't hurt. Now, that's not to say the book didn't have issues. While I was very happy to find out I was wrong about how the book would approach Castor joining the Banished, I was disappointed with what I'm going to call a retcon to the Banished overall, their policy towards humans. Through the book, it's made clear that other non-Keeper Banished clans on Reach hold disdain for humanity as a species and even look down on the Keepers for their openness to humans. This extends to Escharum as well, but I'm fine with this. Not all members of the Banished have to be okay with all other members or species. We even see this to an extent in the Halo Wars 2 Phoenix logs. There still exists animosity between brutes and elites within the Banished, and grunts are still treated like trash, for example. Where I draw the line, however, is Atriox apparently holding a hatred for humanity as a whole. To quote, Castor stared across the Terrans, not acknowledging the cluster of Kigyar, Ungoi, and humans behind him. If Escharum had spoken the truth about who would be arriving with the Lich, it would be better that they stay out of the way until the time came to board. The Kigyar and Ungoi Atriox could tolerate. The humans, though, Castor would be forced to sacrifice. This quote is in reference to Atriox, in case there's any doubt for some reason. So, for some reason, humans being present at Atriox's return would be problematic. We can go back to the official Spartan Field Manual and see this quote, "In theory, all who can aid Atriox's ambition and will bend the knee are welcome, from human to hunter." So, why the sudden shift? We're talking about a Jiralhanae who openly allies with Sankhili, one of the species that sent his brothers to die 40 at a time, but he has some disdain for humanity? I can't buy that. And no, the recent fight with the Spirit of Fire doesn't make any sense as a potential motivation for Atriox's hatred of humanity. That can make him hate the UNSC as a group, but all of humanity? That's a stretch, to say the least. I've also seen some people theorize that he developed a hatred for humanity due to them being the ones that directly wiped out his war brothers, but that doesn't make any more sense to me. The guy is smart enough to know humans were just fighting back to defend against a genocide. Yes, we've seen Atriox slaughter humans and their outposts, but he does the same with Covenant and other alien targets. It has nothing to do with a hatred of any species. He's just a pirate and he'll raid any location with resources he can put to use. He will occasionally seek out individuals like he did with Let Valir, but those are exceptions, not the rule. Now, with all that said, does this drag down my overall opinion of the book? No. It's a shitty plot point, but not enough to really detract from the overall story and its quality. The intrapersonal politics of the Banished, the appearance of the Keepers, the Blue Team and Reach militia dynamic, the return to Reach, all of this is so overwhelmingly good that I cannot help but love this book. A month later, it still earns my 10 out of 10 seal of approval. So, what did y'all think of Shadows of Reach? Let me know in the comments below. And since I know y'all are wondering, what about the short story Sacrifice? Well, I'm going to give that its own video. It's more than worthy of such dedication, trust me. Stay tuned for that. For now though, this has been Halo Canon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this, be sure to check out Audible. By going to audibletrial.com/halocanon, you can get a 30-day free trial and a free audiobook. Audible's selection is unmatched and includes all the Halo novels. You can cancel at any time and keep any audiobooks you've purchased. So check out audibletrial.com/halocanon today.